Ladies and gentlemen, good evening once again. Good evening to all of you, or good morning. In international news, the West is so overwhelmed by Iran's strength, so much so that the Europeans have realized just how much of a military power Iran is, that they are now trying by every possible means to dissuade Donald Trump from entering this war that Israel has started against Iran because they know what the consequences would be. Because Iran has made a promise. Iran has made a promise because up until now, no one knows the limits of Iran's capabilities. Meanwhile, the Iranian foreign minister who was in Geneva today, the 20th of June, 2025, broke his silence, made explosive statements, and this has caused panic on the Israeli side. Ladies and gentlemen, in the context of this conference, that is of course what we are going to talk about. But as you know the drill. Before we continue, I ask you to share the video conference, give it lots of likes, and above all, don't forget to subscribe and also activate the notification bell. That way, you'll be notified whenever there's a new video conference. Let's dive deeper, ladies and gentlemen. So, according to the comprehensive information we are currently receiving, it appears that Europe is actively trying to dissuade Donald Trump from potentially taking a direct part in any future conflict or war against Iran. According to Politico, European officials are using back-channel diplomacy in Geneva to buy time and keep Donald Trump away from a possible military conflict with Iran. So the initiative they took on the Geneva side, you know that today, the 20th of June 2025, they invited the Iranian delegation to Geneva, including the foreign minister and the foreign ministers of 3 European countries, if I'm not mistaken about the number, were present in Geneva. We have France, I believe the United Kingdom, and which other country again? So the goal is to negotiate with Iran. That's why they went. But we learn, according to what Politico just reported, the Western media outlet, Politico learned that this is actually a roundabout strategy. They want, in a way, to act as if they are reviving the diplomatic approach so that Donald Trump completely abandons the idea of going to war with Iran. Because if Donald Trump gets involved in this, I'm telling you clearly, we will automatically be in the Third World War. That's for sure. Because all the allies will rise up. All the allies. And Iran will target American installations, American interests in any country, regardless of that country's geographic location on the globe. Iran will strike. So there's a risk the situation could flare up. And you yourself can see the violence with which Iran acts, the speed with which Iran acts. So let's go deeper. So in private, European diplomats are hoping to convince Donald Trump to abandon his current path toward war. So this statement was made by a diplomat who said, there is something holding Donald Trump back. And this thing that's holding Donald Trump back, they want to press on that so that Trump abandons his current path. We must not go to war against Iran, because if they do, they know the consequences. Iran is ready. Iran's allies are ready. Iran's allies have issued several warnings. So this diplomat also emphasized that although Donald Trump declared that the United States was ready to support Israeli airstrikes, nothing is happening. This leaves some room for maneuver, and he goes on to say, one should not underestimate Trump's disdain for war. Trump does not like war. So here is what they want to do. They are trying to persuade Donald Trump, to dissuade him, so that he abandons the plan. What does that indicate? What does that show us? It shows that they have understood that in this matter, they can't do anything against Iran. If they decide to get involved, they will drag everyone in. And in the end, the whole world will realize that a great state like America has thrown itself at Iran, and the world will see that Israel was not up to the task. So that's the first aspect of the video conference. And so the second aspect, the Iranian foreign minister, Arakchi, his name is Abbas Arakchi, is making a series of statements. And after the famous meeting in Geneva, which should normally be devoted to the start of negotiations, he says this. He says the word surrender is not in our vocabulary. He says the word surrender is not in the vocabulary of the Iranian nation. In other words, capitulation or no, that does not exist in the vocabulary of the Iranian nation, which means they are not backing down, because Trump asked them to surrender, to back down. They say no. He continues. He says this. He says, I told the Europeans. So he's giving an account of what happened during the meeting in Geneva. He says, I told the Europeans that Iran will never negotiate over its missile program, and that uranium enrichment is a red line. So that's a red line that cannot be crossed. If they want war, they just have to bring it on. But Iran will never negotiate, above all, over its missile program. No, they will not negotiate. But why? Meanwhile, others are acquiring missiles. Why should we tell Iran, you have to stop? Why? I'm telling you, this world works in a strange way, but it doesn't stop them. Iran refused to accept the demand for zero uranium enrichment. They were asked to stop enriching uranium. They say it's a red line. Yes, during the negotiations with the E3 in Geneva today, they say it's a red line. There you have it. Iran has declared that it will not negotiate with the United States as long as Israel does not stop the war. And uranium enrichment is the absolute red line. So this is a partial summary of what happened in Geneva on the 20th of June, 2025. It's a very bitter failure. Iran remains on the front line. Yes, Iran remains on the front line. So ladies and gentlemen, that was today's top story. Thank you for sharing it as much as possible. I'll be back with more news shortly. This was the voice of your humble servant, the Samurai.